It was a La Niña kind of summer, where the sun never really reached full strength. 2 weeks into January, and the milder temperatures were kind to the crime rates in Deception Bay. Crowds still flocked to the beach at the bottom of the cliffs of the Devil's Corner. But this year there had been a drop in thefts and assaults. Less heat outdoors reduced the heat indoors. Fewer calls about family violence. Fewer fights outside any of the half-dozen town pubs. Nothing much had changed over the summer inside the CIB office, except that my partner, Senior Detective Warren Harvey, Wozza, to all who knew him, had switched from flat whites to iced coffee to mark the season. He was sipping one as he walked into our office with my latte. I was happy to brave the mild summer weather and drink hot coffee. He put my coffee on my desk, then settled at his, leaned back on his office chair. "Anything?" he asked. Nope. Our phones had been eerily silent for a Monday. I'd used the time to catch up on paperwork and keep an eye on the weather app on my phone, which warned of a severe weather event coming our way. The summer storm jiggled colourfully over the map of Victoria, heading east, heading towards Deception Bay. There were too many magenta pixels for my liking. They meant the storm would bring heavy rain. While I'd fixated on the map, Wozza had played more than his fair share of Tetris. He reckoned it was a better challenge than Candy Crush, and he'd completely failed at Wordle. "Banana cake?" he asked, reaching for a cling-wrapped plate on the shelf behind his desk. "Do you even need to ask?" The banana cake had become a ritual since Norma O'Mealy, the head of the Deception Bay Country Women's Association, had made a habit of dropping one off each week. She had won awards with her banana cake recipe. In honour of the work Wozza and I had done solving a decade-long murder case, we now got cake, and we weren't complaining. Well, Wozza complained that the cake could be bigger, or sometimes chocolate, but aside from that, no complaining at all. As kickbacks went, it was unlikely to be the subject of a royal commission, although Wozza thought Banana Cake Gate did have a headline-worthy ring to it. He cut me a slice and handed it over. "Do you reckon this is the calm before the literal storm?" I considered that for a moment, before returning to Deception Bay, where I'd spent a good part of my childhood with my nan. I'd been a city detective, stationed in Brunswick with access to some of the best coffee in Melbourne, and never a lull in crime. After a contemplative sip of the equally fine coffee that Wozza had brought from my friend Angie's cafe in the main street of town, I said, "No idea. In Brunswick we never had a quiet day." Wozza settled back in his chair with a generous slice of cake. "So Pollard, what's the weirdest thing you ever saw in Brunswick?" I smiled. "Once I was on patrol and we drove past the train station. It was late and the platform was deserted." I paused for dramatic effect. Aside from a rather amorous young couple. Wozza leaned forward and slurped on the straw of his iced coffee, then pressed a hand against his forehead like a fortune teller. "Don't tell me," he said. "I'm getting a vision. They were doing the horizontal limbo." I laughed. "Yep, just not the horizontal part. They were more vertical. Funny thing was that once they finished, they spotted the police car and first they looked horrified, then he bowed and she curtsied." "Did you clap?" Wozza asked. I shook my head. The performance wasn't that good.